And we have Jacob here. Jacob, would you like to just take a few? Well, first, before we do that, let me offer some context. And I'm going to be a disembodied voice on the back end since we've had some technology challenges. So we're just going to wing it today. So why are we here today? We're here today because the CTC is engaged with in a cooperative agreement with the Wisconsin Air National Guard, supporting businesses to access and compete for Department of Defense and particularly the Air Force Innovation Program. And we are recruiting companies to participate in the upcoming SBIR Ready program, where we can take the activity or the challenge that you hear today and package it in a competitive proposal that you could submit for June. Today, we're going to talk with Jacob. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself in the way you want. And the reason we hosted this, like I said, is to learn a little bit more about very specific challenge areas in the Air National Guard and see if we have some Wisconsin businesses or businesses in general that might be able to put forward solutions to very complicated and big challenge areas. And we have a doozy of one here today. We're going to try and spend a few minutes introducing Jacob, a little bit about his background and the work that he does in the Inspector General's office. And then we're going to try and make a quick turn into explaining the problem. And I would encourage businesses on the call to put their questions in on the chat, because we're not going to have another chance to talk with Jacob until we're into the SBIR Ready program, which is another plug for people to sign up if they're interested. So with that said, please put the questions in the chat. Margaret will be our moderator. Margaret, can you hear us? Is everything working well?
Yeah, everything works good.
Fantastic. And I'm going to go ahead and let Jacob just be on camera, and you'll hear my disembodied voice on the background. So why don't we take a few minutes, Jacob, introduce yourself and your background.
All right, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Jacob Coenen. I've been in the Air Force for 25 years. I'm a federal employee, so that's why people will ask, like, well, why haven't you retired yet? Because as a federal employee, I'm under the GS scale. My background is aircraft maintenance, quality assurance, and currently I'm the Inspector General Senior Enlisted Leader. I've been doing the IG position for over 5 years, which in my career field is a really long time. I'm also a part of the Guard Inspector General Council, which we talk directly with National Guard Bureau and on the issues that they see, both on the different major commands, such as the Air Mobility Command, which are all your tankers and your heavy aircraft, and then the fighters, which is your Air Combat Command, which is what we're part of. So today I'm hoping that we can help my peers, and not just the Air National Guard, but the Air Force wide, and trying to find out a solution to an issue that everyone in my career field faces. And we're not given any tools. All we're told is to do a thing, and then we're supposed to create it on our own. We're encouraged to steal products from our peers, but at no point is there any training or any involvement in how to accurately capture what we want. So today we're hoping to find a problem that is called a risk-based sampling strategy. I refer to it as RBSS. And with this, currently it's a collection of information we receive from command from 2 different databases, and we're able to try to quantify how we can take the data that's given to us and that's available and taken from certain leadership and try to find where risk is, so we can accurately inspect it and evaluate it and be able to solve it before it becomes a systemic issue.
And Jacob, can you talk to us about the general activities in the Inspector General's office and kind of use that as a way to introduce the 2 databases? I know we're going to focus this challenge on one of the databases, but I'd like the audience to kind of have a context of how the things work.
Yes. So the 2 databases, one of them is a self-observation database. We call it, it's called MIGT, Management Inspection Tool. And what that is that it's a series of questions, and personnel go through and answer yes or no, and then what observation they see. The other database is what we're hoping that you all can help us with. It's called iGEMS. It's an Inspector General Management Evaluation System, and that's the database that we use. And in this database, it's inspections and exercises that we create, And then we identify issues that are against Air Force and DoD regulations. So if they're against it, then it's called a deficiency. And then these are the items that we track towards closure. And those are the big items that we use for our risk-based sampling strategy.
So in terms of order of operations and the way the databases are used, information goes into IGEM and then is incorporated or referred to or engages with the MGT database, or is it vice versa?
It's completely separate databases. So one doesn't talk to the other. The one is completely a self-observation tool that is given by Big Air Force for each individual section within the military to answer. And it's a series of questions, and you have to answer them appropriately per Air Force and DoD guidance. And the second one is a database that we use as the Inspector General to identify issues and deficiencies that we find with assistance from other points of contact throughout the Air Force.
And that's the IGEM database.
That's the IGEMs, yes.
That's the IGEM. And tell me a little bit, Jacob, how the information, I know we're going to show some examples here, but can you tell me a little bit about how the information comes into your office? What does that process look like?
So as the Inspector General, we're kind of the point of contact for both these databases. Every organization has to kind of go through us to get access to both of these databases. So if you were an airman working out in a specific career field, you would work with us to get access to both the MGT database. And then in this MGT database, you'd be assigned a series of questions based off of your job. So then you would go through these questions and say yes or no, or it's not applicable if you're doing the thing that you're told that you have to do. The IGEMS database is completely a system that we use directly. And when we identify a deficiency, we're giving it to that airman, and we tell them that they have to come up with a corrective action plan to fix it.
So can you tell us a little bit about what does a deficiency mean? How do you know something is deficient, and what are the range of deficiencies so that we can get a flavor of like the kind of information that's flowing into your office?
So a deficiency is defined as something that's against Air Force regulation, meaning that if an Air Force instruction, DoD guidance, or any other resource out there that says it's mandatory for use states that you will, shall, or must do something, and if we find that during our inspection process they are not doing it, then we define that as deficiency. The category of the deficiencies are in three categories. You have a minor, you have a significant, and then you have a critical. A minor deficiency is those 80% of the items that you find, like someone didn't put a tool away correctly, or something is misidentified, or a publication was no longer valid anymore, but they're still using it. A significant could have a mission impact, meaning that if not corrected, it could be detrimental to the success of a certain organization. And a critical is you need to fix that immediately, or people could die, people could get hurt, or against DoD laws and regulations.
And just to put it into the scale of activity, right? So there are several functional units here at the 115th alone, and that is including but not limited to just the aircrafts that are flying and the pilots. So talk to us a little bit about the scale of information that's coming into your office.
So we have 4 to 5 major organizations on base, and they're separated by aircraft maintenance, which in itself is 3 individual sections within that group. The second is the medical group, and the medical group has its own huge variety of sections within. You have the biomedical, you have your immunizations, you have your dentists, you have your doctors and nurses, and they all have a certain amount of questions that they have to answer. Then you also have your mission support group, which is your force support squadron, which is your personnel side. You have your security forces, you have your communications flight, you have your logistics section, which deals with removing and sending out parts. So there you have all these different organizations, and each organization in itself has about anywhere between 400 to 500 different questions that they all have to answer. So every section is a little bit different, and if you do that multiplication, it's over thousands of different questions and observations that airmen here with just one wing will have to answer.
And what I find interesting is that, the Air National Guard, the 115th flies mission sets, not just with what's going on here in the state, but you guys have mission alignment with other states, right? And so Tell us a little bit about if or how your IG office works with other IG offices, or if there's particular sister states or sister units that you work most closely with.
Yeah, so there's a lot of air guard bases and active duty bases around us. So what we usually do is, because I'm not an expert in all areas, what I will do is I will tap into the resources such as Duluth. Duluth, Minnesota has the same mission as we do. They fly the same aircraft. So a lot of times we'll have them travel the 6 to 8 hours it takes to drive from Duluth and help us inspect our organization. And at the same time, we have Milwaukee, which is only like 3 hours away, but they're a completely different type of aircraft and a completely different major command. So utilizing their resources for our aircraft doesn't make any sense, but we will tap into our Milwaukee friends to the east and use them for our security forces and our force support squadron because the missions are alike. There's a lot of times, like even today, we have a member here from California who is the subject matter expert within our food preparation. So we have a member here actually today we've flown in from California to help inspect our services section. So, excuse me, but we are tapping into real smart people throughout the Air Force to help us improve our program.
Wonderful. So let's just kind of get into the weeds here. I'm going to stop sharing this screen so that you have a chance to, we're going to toggle and start sharing one of the other databases just to demonstrate how the information is coming in and the kind of complications. So let me reshare the screen. And this isn't the first one, but you'll just toggle between and figure, you can see that, right? Great. So which one would you like to start with to kind of showcase how the information is coming in for you?
Show that one.
Okay, fantastic.
So this right here is a report that we're able to pull that just focuses specifically on observations. So this is a series of questions like assessment notes and then the observation comments. So in each one of these questions, the airman went through and said, no, we're not doing this. And we're not doing it because of this. So, man, if you want my scroll.
Please go.
So if you can see that this is just our installation, and you can see the questions and observations that I kind of have to go through to forward look to see what the observations are. So our job is to manage this program and make sure that people are kind of going in and answering all these different questions. And again, it's a completely user interface. So the airman whose job is to answer these questions over here to the left, and this is the observation that they write. So this is not only seen by our base in my office, but it's seen at the big Air Force level too. So at the big Air Force level, the same question may be applicable to every Air Force and Air National Guard unit across the globe. And one member who is the functional area manager, or the FAM, goes through and assigns these questions, and then they can pull reports on our no QA positions funded at the CRTC. Well, they can see how applicable this one question and how many sections are have an observation with this. So this is the MIG-T side. This is the airman responding to a question from their functional area manager, or FAM. So this is just one database. That's the one that people use internally. So I have to go through this and filter out what I need for my risk-based sampling strategy, or RBSS.
So what I see here in column M, for example, might be there was a question, they wrote a narrative.
Yep.
And then there was an analysis or an assessment of the narrative that was written.
Correct. Yep.
That's column N here.
Yes. And then this is just one database we were able to pull just to look at observations. So you can kind of see that these are the questions. This is the response, the quick response, and then this is over here is the analysis. So you can kind of see that it's actually 3 parts that we kind of have to go through. First, you have to figure out what the question is, how they initially respond, and then how are they going to resolve it. They also kind of go in and list the status of it too. They put the paragraph number, and then they also do assign a name to whoever's supposed to be managing it.
So part of the challenge here is that the responses to these questions aren't standard.
Correct.
And it may be that someone is very well in communicating that they are meeting or not meeting expectations. They can cite or reference various codes that align with their assessment and their assessment of the situation. And then the next challenge is that how well people have understood or communicated or aligned their responses to these very specific code violations or code determinations, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So there's a little bit of guesswork, there's a lot of art, there's some inconsistency, and then there's a ton of narrative that you're sifting through.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then so what's the next step? So once, excuse me, as I pop my head into this has been a joy. And I see the questions coming in, so we're just going to try and go through and make sure we give some time. So once this is done, what's the next level that you see?
So the next level is I have to take the deficiencies that we find within our iGEMS database, the database that we are only exclusive to for inspections and exercises that we have conducted at our level. So I have to go, if you want to go to the iGEMS one. So
Sure.
then we take the deficiencies that we capture, and then we have to kind of sift through that information as well too. One right above it. There. So this is an example, a database that I've created, and I don't really have time to go through it. But this is kind of the deficiencies that we've seen at our level. Right here. So this is kind of the deficiencies that we've seen. You can kind of see that when we did an inspection, a unit did not lock up their toolbox, and you kind of see, but there's over 1,500 points of data that I have to go through. And there's really no Control F. There's no search option with any of this. I mean, we do have, we can go through the different references, but how this database works is that you would see the deficiency, and then you would type in how are you going to close it. So you can kind of see here that we wrote it up as a minor deficiency. We put references in there, but then the user has to put in a corrective action plan of how they're going to fix this deficiency.
Okay. Wonderful. Now I'm getting a couple of texts, so I can't see the information. That's not the point of today's conversation. That's what we'll get to do at a later, more detailed, for those companies that think that they have a solution. We'll facilitate some one-on-one engagement. But the whole point of today is really to provide a high-level description of the experience this user has in trying to manage the data and get you thinking about what kinds of solutions might be a good fit. And right now, what we've seen are some challenges in organizing the text, being able to pull and organize the actual drop down when people have drop down responses, being able to pull and manage the information against actual codes that evaluate whether or not this was a deficiency, and then to be able to prioritize whether it was high risk or low risk deficiency, right?
Right.
And I noticed here, just for the sake of time, you've tried to take a stab at trying to organize this, because what I understand is what the experience is now is that you have all of this information and you're looking backwards at what incidences have occurred. And what you'd love to be able to do with a risk management tool is take this and look forward into what might be coming down the pipeline. And that's what you're trying to do with this image here, right?
Correct. So this is one example of an RBSS that other units like mine have done. So I've done it into a 3-part strategy. So I've taken the data, the raw data, and I've taken just numerical data. So I'm looking at how many minor, significance, critical, both in the McT program and in the iGEMS. And I'm doing a standard deviation to figure out where risk is. So it's at high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Then I'm taking a second approach, and I'm just doing the gut feeling that we have. So I'm taking surveys that we have done, if they have a quality assurance program, if they had a full section evaluation and inspection, which we call our IG verticals, and then we've looked at any sort of like a gut feeling, like this is how we feel, this is what we're hearing. So we're taking a lot of our peers' recommendations, and then we assess the risk in this block here. The third one, we kind of leave it up to the individual sections. So a lot of the sections, we have our wing commander. So our wing commander has a lot of say in where he feels risk is. Then we have the commanders of each of the different sections. Then we have a chief, who is our senior enlisted member. And then we have a team called our wing inspection team. We use these folks to help us inspect individual programs and processes. And we also use them for our exercises too. So we have a worksheet that we have them fill out, and then they assess a number of how high their risk is. And then we use that data. And then once we take all 3 points of data is how we overall our risk. So we take the raw data from those 2 databases, we take our assessment, we take the self-assessments from the individual squadrons and flights, and then we give them an overall risk. This is a great tool to find out which sections have the highest risk. However, it doesn't actually tell you where the risk is. And we've tried to develop programs to have them fill out like, okay, we have tool control, like how high a risk is tool control? And then they'll give us a response. And we've listed all these programs, but yet it's not looking forward. Like that's the only database I have that's looking forward. This database here looks at where the risk might be, but that's the only tool I have looking forward. And just like human nature, no one wants to tell you where if they're deficient or not. They all want to say they're great squadrons and they have no issues. So both databases really don't tell you anything. And again, this is just looking at our wing. It doesn't look at, wings in Milwaukee, doesn't look at Duluth, doesn't look at Illinois, and all these different bases are exactly like ours. They have the same mission, they have the same everything. And then the only trending data that we're able to get is by a big Air Force team that goes to each of us once every 4 to 5 years and does an overall giant inspection over all our programs. And instead of waiting once every 4 years, we're told by our guidance to look at this at a minimum yearly, whereas a lot of our peers are trying to find out how can we look at these at real time. So that's kind of where the risk is. And for me to find out a risk of a certain section, I'll have to go through and sift through each one of those data lines. But again, we're only like looking in the past. I'm able to see where one section is failing in a certain program, and then maybe that'll apply to other sections. But because our groups are so different, I mean, security forces and aircraft maintenance are completely different sections. Neither one of them have the same programs. So that's the struggle that we're seeing. And if we're able to find a like unit that has the same exact mission, that has one database that is able to input something in, excuse me, and then have it shared across the entire enterprise, I can look at Duluth, or I can look at New Jersey, and I can look at California, and I can look at Florida, at Jacksonville, and all these different states have the same mission. If I can see what issues that they're struggling, maybe it applies to our base. But right now, we're told by our guidance to do RBSS, but there's nothing out there.
Hey, Idella, I think your bandwidth is low. Maybe
Oh.
stop sharing maybe stop sharing it. Yeah, we couldn't hear the last minute or two.
Oh, okay. Oh, look, he's gone. I love it. I love it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That was my fault. Let me just tell you what's been wonderful working with the airmen here is that there is a lot of technical challenges that we may not appreciate on our side of the table. And today I'm working from my Wi-Fi hotspot on my phone, and I decided to put my phone in my lap, which does disrupt the hotspot communication. So thank you for bearing with us. So we do have a number of questions in the chat, and I think you can see them. I'll just say, Michael, to your question of, will you get some screenshots? No, we're not going to do screenshots because we've gone through some of the security challenges and want to make sure that we're abiding by those. What we do know is that when we've worked through a process that if companies do think they have a solution and would like to apply by June, we can work individually through some manufactured data to demonstrate a process that would allow you to try and work through a pilot solution. So we're not going to share the data here today in real time, but we do have a way to work around so that we can demonstrate that your process might work. I see Jay has a question here, is the data entered through a UI and stored in a relational database, or is the data stored in a bunch of spreadsheets?
So the data is shared. So for the MGT data, the data that is shared, that is the airman who has the job that has to answer a question from the function area manager, that both these databases are shared global. However, for the McT stuff, the question and answer side of it, I can only see my section. Like I can only focus on my wing. I can't see another wing, and that's only based off of you know, what I'm responsible for. Like I can't see what Duluth has because I'm not responsible for Duluth. The iGEM side, I can pull reports for the entire Air Force. However, now I'm going through not just 1,500 points of deficiencies, I'm going over 15,000. So it makes it really difficult to expand and look at other sections when I really don't know what they have done or what they've looked at, unless I'm pulling these giant reports, and then I'm spending the next 2 to 3 weeks sifting through to find out what may or may not be applicable to me. Because right now there is nothing out there that pulls it, and there is no common Control F search item that I can go for. Like I can search a reference, but everyone puts a reference in different. Like you might put in Air Force instruction. One person might use the acronym like AFI. Some people put in dashes. Some people put in dots. So it's almost impossible to input and search just through those options. You could do a Control F for a word, but then someone might spell out the word, some might use the acronym. So you literally have to go through every single line and pull out what might be applicable. And there's the same difficulty too. Like if you're looking at training, it might not be just a training issue. It might be a supervisor issue not doing the training, or it might be a guidance issue. So even if you're like looking for a specific word, even that might be a challenge as well too. So you literally do have to go through every single line and read it word for word to find out what the issue is. And then on top of that, everyone writes different. So then you have to go through and sift through all that. So it's super difficult to kind of go through everything.
There was a good question here about, is there a set of risk assessments that you routinely perform, or is it more ad hoc?
It's ad hoc. There are certain programs that we are required by law to conduct, and those are your sexual assaults program. So we're looking at the program manager and how they're managing sexual assaults. There's your equal opportunity program and how our equal opportunity office is managing their program and helping airmen. There are our transition assistance programs. So when you leave the military, how is that program? So there are by law programs that we have to routinely do annually, but everything else is more what we're trying to look for in that risk-based sampling strategy. Like if we're seeing like one unit has a training issue and another unit has a training issue, maybe we'll look at training. But once every 4 years, we do a top-down look within every single organization. But at that time, we're just guessing at what could be wrong.
So, and are there maybe another way to ask the question, are there particular code violations that are more high risk in your scan of those 1,500 rows here? Are there more that you're really targeting or looking out for?
Yes. So when we find, so when we go into the database that we use, the iGEM, when we go through there, every single deficiency is given a minor, significant, or critical. Those significant and criticals we pull.
Hey, Idella, we're losing you again.
If we look, find out, hey, this is really smart on the program.
Video, my bad. I'll do it again. Is this better? I love having Margaret there to help me out, though. Okay, no more video then. So go on. So you have things that are organized of low, high, and medium risk. You can organize that, and that tends to be your focal point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we significant, minor, significant, and critical, and you probably saw that on the spreadsheet. Those are the programs that we focus intently on. All those minor ones, again, if you have death by 1,000 paper cuts, you might have a lot of minors, but we don't focus as much on those minor deficiencies as we do on those significant and criticals.
And so let me answer the Wiscliffe question about how this is going to be done. We are going to pursue an open topics on this. Then I think that makes the most sense because there really aren't a lot of technical specifications at this point. Right now, there can be, there's paper that's involved. There is pulling information from the paper into into the systems that they're using. There's organizing against various code violations that we've talked about. There's the options of using natural language processing and AI tools to assess information. And then there's the idea of how you are able to talk peer-to-peer. And so there's some platform challenges that you might need to consider. So in my mind, an open topics is really a useful way to go about working through user specifications in a way that will help meet both what's going on here at the 115th as well as partner organizations. And we expect an open topics for June, which is why we're hoping businesses on the call will be interested, because I don't know when the next open topic option may be. Is there a targeted platform to host the tool to perform analysis? Right now, that's a good question, and I'm just going to leave it an open-ended question because the short answer is maybe sort of. As we've talked to others in the ecosystem having this problem, we've talked about ways that you can do it off their systems and make kind of a user, a customized user experience. But that also, if you were to flow from a phase 1 into a phase 2 and beyond, that would be part of your discovery, is understanding how we could use it on the existing platform systems. Are there databases and software products, not just Excel? Do airmen log in and select fields, type in information, and are there databases and spreadsheets from that process?
Yes, so there is a database, but both of them are databases, and they are very user-friendly as far as like you see a question or you see a program, and then when you click on the program, it has a bunch of questions in there. And then each question you're supposed to answer yes, no, or not applicable. Like you're not responsible for it. And then you put in your comment, and then you click on a button. If it's a no, a page opens up, and then you put in all your observations. So the platforms are very, very well maintained. The reports are very detailed, but the struggle that we have are there's no standard way to write it. So if you have two different airmen who are identifying the same program, one person might write it one way, another person writes it another way. So that's the struggle that I have, is that I have to figure out which these two deficiencies are or observations are.
So I love this last question from Adam. Every time. Adam says we've lost again. Is that the same experience that Margaret is having?
Oh, no.
Otherwise, okay.
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, then we're going to go ahead and try this last thing, and that is to show you to Adam's question. Hopefully Adam can still hear, and that is, what's the end game here? Well, the end game is there are two ways to compete for Air Force innovation funding. One is to be very responsive to the technical specifications that they have pulled out. And then the other way is to go through what is relatively new within the past 3 to 5 years as an open topics mechanism. And the way they use the SBIR program is that they use a phase 1 to help you engage with the key point of contact to develop the technical specifications that you can then apply for and compete for stage 2 funding. And that's what we're trying to do today, is that this is an unwieldy problem that exists in the Air Force. And we believe we have small businesses in the ecosystem with technical capabilities to address components or aspects of this. And what we at CTC want to do is help facilitate that dialogue and support your competitive submission via the Air Force's SBIR process, SBIR process. If you haven't already seen, we have outreach right now for the program that will begin on March 15th. And in those 4 sessions, in the first 4 sessions, and then companies who choose to follow on will be supported to understand how to apply, how to work through some of these challenge areas into technical areas that you think you're uniquely qualified to do. And I'll just reiterate that I think that there are 5 or 6 different things that could be addressed. It's the conversion of some of the paper information into the process, the templates that they already have, being able to organize against code violations. So that might be some AI, that might be some general database management, dashboard creation tools, and then being able to make it easier for peer-to-peer engagement across locations. And that will be a bigger issue to solve, but it will require your ability to network. And that would be what the point of this phase 1 is to do, is to help you to begin engagement, useful, meaningful engagement to address or to align your capabilities. And so we're soliciting applications through February 22nd. This is something we pay you to do. And if you submit a competitive proposal, we can pay your business up to $1,500 towards this. and then facilitate engagement here with Jacob, as well as some key partners. So we have Apex, which is a partner organization out of Ohio that does a lot of work for Air Force research labs and works with small businesses as well as university partners to get innovations moving forward. Companies that do the phase one program are enabled through what the Apex resources are. So some of those conversations of what are the databases, what are the back end, how do you get it on a platform? We use those partners to help answer those questions to make your proposal sing. We also have engagement with retired Brigadier General Carl Bueller, who's moved from Air Force into the private consulting world on the SBIR process. And he's been really instrumental in helping us navigate those questions like confidentiality. Can we get these data? Well, here are some ways that we can work around the process in order to give you sample data so that you can actually demonstrate something and move forward into a phase 2 award. So that is what we're hoping to bring to company. Well, this is what we'll bring to companies that are participating in the SBIR Ready program. And then I just want to cue you up that there are some additional non-dilutive funding programs that will that are available to you, including Idea Advanced, and companies that get an SBIR award are eligible for non-dilutive funding through the SBIR Advanced program. I know we did a drinking from a fire hose bit of content here today, and that is 30 minutes of a quick chat. But we hope that there are enough interested folks, and CTC will field some questions on the back end, and will definitely help you navigate a proposal or engagement with the Air Force towards a proposal if you participate in the SBIR Ready program. I'm going to pause one more time and see if there's any last minute questions before we sign off, since we are over our time now. Are you prepared to sign the customer memorandum for the phase 2? There's a major education piece lacking in Wisconsin on the program, and we have invested large resources only to have the Air National Guard change their mind. So let me offer this for the group. This is the benefit of what we're trying to create with our cooperative agreement. So if you were doing this last year, you may have encountered some problems because it is difficult, and it's not something that everybody understands what the AFWorks and the SBIR program is. But they're standing up a infrastructure here with the Air National Guard to make those conversations a lot easier. So the short answer is, I can't guarantee that there will be no problems, but I can guarantee that we've put in some processes to make it a little less difficult for businesses. And that's why we're trying to get you into this thinking process well ahead of the June deadline, so we have enough time to get these things solved. Any final questions before we close this quick chat? No, not hearing anybody. I really appreciate everybody joining us on the call today. I hope there'll be some interested folks who want to move forward with Jacob's challenge. He has a real need, and he would love to have some companies engage on some real solutions here. We'll follow up with an email on some additional resources, and I say thank you again for joining us.